What's up, everybody? It's college football week 7, and I've got 6 best bets for you. So, first, we're going to kick it off with Air Force. We're going to lay 3.5 at Navy. So, Air Force has pretty much dominated the series recently. Last year, they beat Navy 35-7 at home. I don't think that Navy has improved very much over the last year. 3-11 last year, so I'm sure they can win maybe 5-6 games this year, maybe get back to a bowl. But Air Force is just the better team. They're coming off a double-digit win over San Jose State. And, they've been playing really well against heavy running teams. They're playing really well in the Commander-in-Chief series. So not going to get complicated here. We're going to take Air Force minus 3.5. The next game is going to be UMASS at FIU over 67.5. So UMass, they've probably got the worst defense in the country outside of maybe Connecticut. And, FIU, James Morgan's a really good quarterback. He can sling the ball around. They're going to score some points, but their run defense is pretty bad. FIU is 121st in yards per carry on defense. And UMass is 129th yards per carry on defense. So that lets you know there's going to be explosive plays in the running game. When UMass can get going running the ball and FIU can get going running the ball to complement the passing game, there's going to be a lot of yards, to be a lot of points. The last two matchups between these teams, we had 87 points last year and 108 2 years ago. So the total is 67.5, so that's much less. And I think with what we've seen from the two teams in this series, over 67.5 is a good look. The third game is going to be UAB. They're at home against Rice, coming off a road loss by a touchdown to Western Kentucky. This game is coming back at home off their first loss of the season, so I feel like UAB is in a good bounce-back spot. They play really good on defense. They've been very good in conference play since they've got their team back in the past couple of years. So Rice is really bad. They're giving up 400 yards per game, 282 yards on the ground. So, UAB's laying 10 here. I don't necessarily like laying double digits with UAB right now because Tyler Johnson's threw 4 interceptions last week. You just kind of have to hope that they don't turn the ball over this week. But I think they'll get some of that corrected being at home. They've dominated this series. This is one of those weeks where you get a few games where, one team has dominated the series, and I think that continues. So in 2018, they won 42-0. They shut them out. It was never close. And then 2 years ago, they beat Rice 52-21. So this series has not been close lately. Rice has not taken a huge step forward in any way. And I think UAB, even though they lost a lot of pieces last year, they're playing good enough on defense. And Tyler Johnson can still sling the ball around as long as he doesn't go out and throw 4 picks. So we're going to take UAB at home versus Rice minus 9.5. The next game is Oregon at home against Cal. Oregon is playing really good defense this year. They've not been known for playing defense in a very long time. But they're giving up 262 yards per game on defense. That's spectacular. They're 8th in yards per play given up. Cal comes in 95th in yards per carry. So it's not like they're going to run the ball for a lot of yards. They don't have a lot of explosive plays. Their offense was coming together pretty well with the quarterback this year. But Chase Scarvers is out now. He got hurt in the second half of last week's game, and if you watch that game, they were hanging tight with Arizona State. And then when he goes out and Devin Monster comes in, their offense was very stagnant. The first possession that he comes in, they turn a 70-yard drive into an interception. The only touchdown that they scored, the only points that they scored in the whole second half against Arizona State was off a drive where they ran the ball every single play. So they don't trust him to throw. I don't think he's very good at throwing. And, with Oregon's defense has improved as it is, they're just going to have a hard time moving the ball, and they're not going to have any explosive plays, so they're going to have to manufacture long drives. So I think Oregon's in a pretty good spot here. We're going to lay 18 with Oregon. Kind of wish I could get a 17 so that we didn't have to be above a key number, but I don't see how Cal gets out of the single digits, maybe 10 or 13 points. So if Oregon scores 28, 31, something like that, they should be able to cover this game pretty easily. And the next game I've got here is Washington at Stanford minus 16.5. We're going to take Washington minus 16.5. So Stanford's having a pretty bad year. They're coming off a win on the road against Oregon State, but I don't think that impresses anybody. Their losses this year have been by at least 2 touchdowns. They lost by 15 to Oregon. They lost by 25 at USC, and they lost by 18 at UCF. And even though they're at home here, they lost by 2 touchdowns to Oregon at home. So, Washington's been rolling right now. I love Jacob Eason. I've been riding Washington. I think this is the 3rd week in a row that I'm riding with them. But they're playing very well, whether they're on the road or at home. Stanford was out-yarded by Oregon State last week, 501 to 353. So that's by 150 yards that they got out-yarded by Oregon State. 350 yards against Oregon State's defense. That's pathetic, and that's not good enough. And if Washington comes out focused, even though it's on the road, they should have no problem covering 17. I could see them winning by 21, 24, something like that. Stanford, they've got just barely over 100 yards rushing per game. So they're going to have to sling the ball around. They've got 4.8 yards per play. That's 97th in the country. So they're having to manufacture long drives. That's just not going to work against a good Washington defense. They've barely got 300 yards per game on offense. They're 94th in yards per play on defense. So they're giving up explosive plays, and Washington is just the team to be able to capitalize off of that. Washington beat USC by 14 at home, and Stanford lost to USC by 25 on the road. I know that was on the road compared to Washington being at home, but that Stanford's just not good enough. And even if it's close at halftime, I think Washington ought to be able to wear them down in the second half. So we're going to take Washington minus 16.5. And the last game here that I like, this is my favorite game of the week. Boise State minus 22 at UNLV. Tony Sanchez probably gets fired at the end of the year at UNLV. They're not doing very well. They got blown out against Wyoming, and Wyoming had multiple players out last week, key pieces out, and UNLV was still not competitive. They gave up over 8 yards per play against Wyoming, and Wyoming's offense is horrible. They don't put up a lot of points. They don't put up a lot of yards. They're giving up 37 points per game on defense. And Boise, in this game, Boise could score 50 if they want, if they come out motivated. UNLV has turned the ball over 6 times in the last 2 games. If they come out and turn the ball over 3 times in this game, Boise is just going to run away with it early. And UNLV is mostly a run team. And so if they get down, they're not going to be able to throw the ball well to come back. And Boise State is 8th in the nation in sack percentage. So they can get pressure on the quarterback, and UNLV, they've just got a lot of problems. They have 3 offensive linemen this week that their coach says they're going to shuffle around on that offense. So they've got 3 guys playing out of position. Nothing that I've read sounds like UNLV believes they can be competitive in this game. And especially once you feel like your coach is out the door anyway at the end of the season, you don't have much to play for. So I think Boise State could cover this at halftime. But we're going to go Boise State minus 22, and that's my best bet of the week. A couple of other ones that I'm looking at so far. I kind of like UCF minus 4 at Cincinnati. I don't really like taking them on the road, but I think they're pretty focused now after that loss to Pittsburgh. I kind of like Wisconsin minus 21.5 against Kent State for the first half. I think they come out and roll in the first half, trying to get the running back a bunch of yards and touchdowns for the Heisman race, and then maybe they just settle down in the second half. I'm looking at Penn State minus 28. James Franklin loves to run the score up, and Purdue. Sindelar's out at quarterback for Purdue. Rondale Moore's out at wide receiver for Purdue, and that's pretty much their whole offense there. So if Penn State gets the chance to run the score up, they will. I also like Pitt plus 5. Looking at Ohio minus 3 and Western Michigan plus 2. None of those are bets that I have yet, but I'm going to keep researching and see what I come up with. But definitely best bet of the week is Boise State minus 22.